Hi there. This is Mark Iampietro asking that if you are enjoying our Exploring Bethlehem series, that you please hit the like and the subscribe buttons. This helps us reach a wider audience, and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks and keep watching. For much of Bethlehem's early history, the land south of the Lehigh River was still farmland, broad, open acreage owned by the Moravians, and lying beyond the tightly ordered world of the original settlement. Before 1847, 4 major tracts stretched across that side of the river: the Hoffert, Führer, Jacobi, and Luckenbach farms. At a time when most people saw only fields, one man saw a future town. His name was Charles Augustus Luckenbach. Contemporary histories of South Bethlehem identify him as the man who retained the Luckenbach farm, laid out part of it as Augusta in 1852, and helped set in motion the development that later became South Bethlehem. Luckenbach was no ordinary landowner. He was already one of Bethlehem's most accomplished citizens. A successful businessman and owner of a grist mill, a bank president, a founder of the Thomas Iron Works, the first Burgess of Bethlehem, and later a member of the Pennsylvania legislature. He lived at a moment when Bethlehem itself was changing. The old Moravian idea of a closed community was giving way to a new reality. The church could see that outside growth was coming, and the challenge was no longer whether development would happen, but how it might be guided. Sources on Bethlehem's borough history and local preservation planning note both Luckenbach's civic role and his importance in shaping the South Side's early street grid and land use. Luckenbach understood the moment better than most of his generation. He recognized that the Moravians were ready to part with their southern lands, and he moved decisively. He secured an agreement to purchase the 4 farms from the Moravian Society at prices initially valued around $75 per acre. By 1848, he held title to the land that would become the future borough of South Bethlehem. He then sold off the Hoffert, Führer, and Jacobi tracts at a profit, average prices climbing above $85 per acre, while keeping for himself the most strategically valuable parcel, the large Luckenbach farm along the river. The 1915 semi-centennial history and later summaries of South Bethlehem's early development describe this sequence and emphasize that Luckenbach kept the riverfront property that proved most useful for later industry. That was the truly clever part. Many investors of that era thought in terms of farms, roads, and simple town lots. Luckenbach thought bigger. He looked at Bethlehem's location and understood that geography itself was destiny. Here was a community positioned between the anthracite coal fields and the great markets of Philadelphia and New York. Here was a place with access to the Lehigh Canal and soon, potentially, to expanding railroad lines. Here was a riverfront that could attract furnaces, mills, smelters, warehouses, and transportation links. In short, Luckenbach sensed that the south side of Bethlehem was not merely suitable for growth. Later histories of the borough tie the Augusta/Wetherill area directly to the coming of railroads and manufacturing, including zinc and ironworks. In 1852, Luckenbach began dividing portions of his retained farm into lots and gave the new tract a hopeful name, Augusta. This was the first real beginning of what would become South Bethlehem. Augusta occupied land between the river and the rail corridor, and it was here that the pattern of future growth began to emerge. As demand increased, land values rose sharply. Parcels that had once been worth only $75 an acre were soon climbing toward $200 per acre. What had been open farmland was being transformed into opportunity. Other men quickly saw what Luckenbach had seen. Among them was Charles Broadhead, another energetic land speculator. Broadhead acquired major acreage, extended the town plot, and in 1854 renamed Augusta as Wetherill, honoring Philadelphia businessman John P. Wetherill. That renaming would not be the last. The settlement continued to grow as railroads and industry pushed development south of the river. Then, in 1865, the community was incorporated as the borough of South Bethlehem, the name by which history would remember it. The sequence, Augusta, then Wetherill, then South Bethlehem, is well documented in the borough's own historical accounts. What makes Charles Augustus Luckenbach so important is not simply that he bought land and sold it. Many men did that. What set him apart was vision. He seems to have understood earlier than most that Bethlehem's future would not remain confined to the quiet Moravian streets north of the river. He saw that the south side, especially the riverfront, would become the logical home of transport, manufacturing, and commerce. He was right. Over the decades that followed, the lands once divided from those four farms would become neighborhoods, streets, rail corridors, and industrial sites that shaped not only South Bethlehem, but the growth of the entire city. Histories of the borough consistently point to Augusta as the true beginning of later South Bethlehem, and to the industrial build-out of that district as central to Bethlehem's rise. So when we look at South Bethlehem today, it is worth remembering that before the mills, before the rail lines, before the smoke and furnaces and crowded streets, there was a man who looked across open farmland and imagined something more. Charles Augustus Luckenbach stood at the turning point between Old Bethlehem and Industrial Bethlehem. He was in the right place at the right time, yes. But more than that, he had the instincts to recognize the future before it arrived. And in doing so, he helped lay the groundwork for one of America's great industrial communities.